When she said goodbye, you thought it was the end. The silence that followed felt like the world had stopped spinning, like everything that once made sense suddenly disappeared. But in that very moment, something powerful began to shift within you. That pain, that crushing emptiness, wasn't the end of your story, it was the beginning of your awakening. Sometimes, life uses heartbreak to shake you out of the comfort that was holding you back. You see, Stoicism teaches that what happens to you is not what defines you. It's how you respond that matters. And when she walked away, it gave you the chance to finally meet the man you were meant to be. At first, you probably replayed every word, every memory, every moment trying to understand why. You blamed yourself. You searched for answers that would never come. But then you realized something deeper. Her goodbye wasn't about you losing her, it was about you finding yourself. That moment of loss forced you to look inward, to face the truth you had been ignoring all along. That your peace, your worth, your purpose were never supposed to come from another person. You were relying on her affection to fill the void you refused to face. But the universe had a different plan. Her leaving wasn't rejection. It was redirection. In her absence, you began to see your own reflection more clearly. The silence became your teacher. You learned to sit alone, not out of loneliness, but out of peace. You began to understand that love should never come at the cost of self-respect. The pain that once burned you began to purify you. You stopped asking why she left and started asking what you needed to learn. Slowly, you stopped reacting emotionally and started observing calmly. That's what true strength looks like. The ability to feel pain and not let it define you, to face heartbreak and not lose your balance. She thought her goodbye would weaken you, that you'd crumble and chase after her to fill the emptiness she left behind. But you didn't. You stood still. You breathed through the ache. You refused to beg for someone who couldn't see your value. And that's when the awakening truly began. Every day that you chose to stay silent instead of pleading for attention, you grew stronger. Every time you focused on your growth instead of her absence, you took back control of your life. That's the beauty of Stoicism. It teaches you that peace doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from mastering yourself. And as time passed, you began to see what that goodbye really was. Not an ending, but a test. A test to see whether you would lose yourself trying to hold on to someone, or rediscover yourself by letting them go. You chose the latter. You chose strength over desperation, growth over pain, peace over chaos. Her goodbye wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your awakening. The moment you stopped needing her and started becoming the man you were always meant to be. When she said goodbye, she believed you would chase her. She thought your world revolved around her presence, that your silence would eventually break, and you would come running back just to remind her of your love. But instead, something unexpected happened. You stayed calm. You didn't fight, you didn't plead, and you didn't try to convince her to stay. And that silence, that composure, that quiet strength, it changed everything. It shattered her expectations and made her realize that maybe she was the one who underestimated your worth. Most men, when faced with rejection, crumble under the weight of emotion. They text, call, beg, or try to prove their value through words. But a man rooted in Stoicism understands that chasing someone who doesn't value him only weakens his spirit. When she walked away, you understood that your peace was not something to be negotiated. You refused to give your energy to someone who couldn't see the depth of your presence when you were right there. You chose restraint. You chose stillness, and that restraint made her question everything. It's ironic, isn't it? How silence can speak louder than 1,000 words. When she expected drama, you gave her peace. When she expected pain, you showed composure. When she expected validation, you gave her absence. That's the psychological shift that rattles her mind, because now she doesn't know where she stands with you. She wonders if she mattered as much as she thought she did. That uncertainty becomes the seed of her regret. You see, the human mind always craves what it can't control, and when you stop being predictable, you become magnetic again. Your calmness became her mirror. It reflected her own confusion, her own guilt, her own emptiness. For the first time, she was forced to confront what life looked like without your energy feeding her sense of importance. While you were growing in silence, she was shrinking in her own thoughts. Your peace became her chaos. That's the paradox of letting go. When you detach from needing her, she begins to feel your absence more deeply than your presence ever did. Every moment of your restraint was a reminder that real strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about being so grounded that nothing external can shake you. She expected you to react emotionally, but you responded with maturity. You didn't ignore her out of ego, you simply stopped giving energy to a situation that no longer deserved it. And that, more than anything, is what makes her realize your true worth, the realization that your love was a privilege, not a guarantee. So, when she said goodbye, she thought she was ending something. But in reality, she awakened something far greater, a man who no longer needs to chase what doesn't align with his peace. And that realization will haunt her long after you've found peace in your silence. There comes a moment when your silence begins to echo louder than her words ever could. She starts to feel it, that quiet distance, that calm you now carry, that peace that once seemed impossible. She remembers how much attention you gave her, how your world seemed to revolve around her presence, and now she finds herself wondering why it doesn't anymore. That's when it hits her. She no longer has access to your energy. She can't feel your emotional pull, your curiosity, your need to check in or fix things. And it bothers her more than she's willing to admit. When a man walks away with dignity, something powerful happens in a woman's mind. She starts to replay every conversation, every small moment, every detail that once felt ordinary but now feels precious. Your detachment becomes a mirror reflecting her own choices. She thought leaving or pulling away would give her control, but what she didn't expect was that your calm indifference would shift the power entirely. You stopped reacting, and by doing that, you became unpredictable. And nothing captivates the human mind more than uncertainty. You see, when a man stops chasing, he stops feeding her emotional validation. She's no longer the center of attention, no longer the one who decides when or how things move. And that absence creates a void. Not because she suddenly loves you again, but because she can't understand how she lost influence over someone who once cared deeply. That confusion turns into curiosity, and that curiosity slowly transforms into longing. It's a psychological trigger, the same one that makes people crave what they feel slipping away. She begins to notice the difference between your silence and the attention of others. Other men might text, call, or compliment her endlessly, but none of it feels the same. Because while they try to impress, you do something more powerful. You remain silent and focused. You're not playing games, you're mastering self-control. You're not punishing her, you're protecting your peace. And the longer you stay composed, the more she starts to question her decision. In her quiet moments, she wonders if she made a mistake. She remembers how genuine you were, how your presence brought stability, and how you never needed to be loud to prove your worth. That realization begins to sting, because now she understands something she couldn't see before. Not every man can walk away without bitterness. Not every man can stay silent without resentment. But you did. You showed strength through detachment, and that's what makes her start to miss you in ways she can't explain. Your silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need validation to feel whole. And while she might not admit it out loud, she begins to realize that losing a man like you isn't something she'll easily recover from, because your absence now carries the weight of everything she took for granted. When she said goodbye, she thought it would be simple. She assumed you'd eventually come back, apologize, or chase her one more time, because that's what you used to do. But when you didn't, something unexpected started happening. Instead of the freedom she imagined, she began to feel emptiness. Instead of excitement, there was confusion. Because in her mind, she thought she had the upper hand. She thought she could walk away and still have your attention waiting for her. But this time, you gave her something she wasn't prepared for: silence and acceptance. And that silence hits differently when it comes from a man who truly cared. It's not the silence of indifference. It's the silence of growth. She feels the absence of your presence in ways words can't describe. She notices that her messages don't get the same response, her posts don't get your attention, and her energy no longer affects you. That's when the realization begins to sink in. She's not as important in your world as she once believed. And that loss of emotional power unsettles her more than losing the relationship itself. You see, when a man truly moves on, not with anger but with peace, it creates an invisible shift. His energy changes. He's no longer driven by the need to prove his worth to someone who couldn't recognize it. He's no longer looking back hoping she'll see his value. Instead, he's focused on himself, on rebuilding, on improving, on mastering his emotions. And that version of you, calm, composed, unbothered, becomes something she never expected to see. She realizes that the man she left is not the same man she could ever get back. This transformation breaks her in ways she never anticipated. Because deep down, she always believed you'd stay available. That no matter what, she could return and find you there waiting. But when you finally walk away for good, she starts to experience the consequences of her choices. She begins to miss the little things. Your consistency, your patience, the way you understood her even when she couldn't understand herself. And as time passes, that nostalgia grows heavier. It turns into regret. Regret is a powerful teacher. It doesn't scream, it whispers in moments of silence. It reminds her of everything she took for granted. Your loyalty, your effort, your sincerity. And the more she tries to distract herself, the louder that regret becomes. That's when she begins to understand that losing a good man isn't just losing a person. It's losing peace, stability, and emotional security. So when she said goodbye, she believed she was walking toward something better. But what she didn't expect was that her goodbye would lead her to emptiness while leading you toward strength. And in that reversal, she learns the hardest truth of all, that a man who finds peace after pain is no longer someone she can control, and no amount of words can bring him back. When she said goodbye, she imagined you would fall apart without her. She believed that walking away would somehow make you chase her harder, that her absence would make you desperate enough to prove your love again. But what she didn't realize was that her goodbye was the beginning of your awakening. It was the moment you stopped trying to convince someone of your worth and started rediscovering it for yourself. The pain of her departure became the fire that pushed you toward growth, toward self-mastery, toward becoming a man who doesn't beg for love, but attracts it effortlessly through his strength and silence. At first, it hurts. Of course it does. You replay the moments, question your actions, and wonder what went wrong. But then something changes. You stop seeking closure from her and start finding it within yourself. You begin to see that her leaving wasn't a punishment. It was a lesson that not everyone you give your heart to will value it, and not everyone who walks away deserves to return. That realization is what starts to set you free. You begin to rise quietly, not to prove anything to her, but to rebuild the parts of yourself you lost trying to keep her. That's when true transformation happens. You start caring more about your purpose than her opinions. You focus on your health, your work, your peace. You replace anxiety with discipline, confusion with clarity. Your world no longer revolves around her presence. It revolves around your potential. And ironically, that's when she starts to notice the change. The man she thought she could easily forget has become someone she can't stop thinking about. The silence she once took as weakness now feels like power. She sees your growth, your glow, your calmness, and it shakes her. But by then, it's too late. You've learned that real strength doesn't come from holding on, it comes from letting go with grace. You've learned that love, when it's one-sided, becomes self-destruction, and you refuse to destroy yourself again for someone who couldn't see your value when you were at your lowest. That shift, that unspoken confidence, becomes your greatest revenge. Because the man you are now no longer needs validation, attention, or her approval. You've outgrown the version of yourself that needed her to feel complete. And that's what truly breaks her. The realization that she didn't just lose a man. She lost the version of you that loved her unconditionally. She can't go back and undo the goodbye. She can't rewrite the story where you stayed. You've moved on, not in bitterness, but in peace. And there's nothing more powerful, more attractive, or more unshakable than a man who turns heartbreak into evolution. That's the beauty of your silence. It's not emptiness, it's strength, not avoidance, but awareness. You didn't lose her. You found yourself. And that's the ending she never saw coming. When she said goodbye, she expected you to chase her, to break down, to prove your love one last time. But when you didn't, when you chose silence over reaction, that's when everything started to shift. Because a man's silence after heartbreak isn't emptiness. It's evolution. It's the quiet rebuilding of his mind, his soul, his purpose. It's the transformation that turns emotional pain into power. You see, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your worth, and instead start showing it through your calmness, through your discipline, through your peace, that's when the tables turn. That's when she starts realizing that the goodbye she thought would make you weaker actually made you unstoppable. She begins to sense it. The energy changes. The man she thought she had figured out is no longer predictable. He's no longer trying to prove anything. His focus has shifted inward, and that's what unsettles her the most. Because deep down, she realizes that your silence means detachment, and detachment is power. When you no longer react, she loses control of the emotional game. She can't manipulate what she can't affect. She can't confuse a man who's at peace. And that's where your true strength lies, in no longer needing to win her back, because you've already won yourself back. That's the Stoic way. A Stoic man doesn't chase what's gone. He observes, accepts, and rebuilds. He doesn't waste energy trying to change someone's perception of him. He refines himself until perception becomes irrelevant. And that calm confidence, that self-possession, it's magnetic. People feel it even in your silence. She feels it too. Because she starts to notice that while she's replaying the past, you're creating your future. While she's trying to figure out what you're thinking, you're too busy elevating. And that, more than anything, makes her realize what she lost. It's not about revenge. It's not about making her regret. It's about outgrowing the need for her recognition. It's about reaching a point where you genuinely wish her well, but you've moved on with such peace that no apology or return could shake it. When a man gets there, he becomes untouchable. He becomes someone no loss can break because he's grounded in something far deeper than temporary affection. He's grounded in self-respect, purpose, and clarity. That's what she didn't expect. That her goodbye would be the beginning of your greatness. That losing her would be the very thing that pushed you into becoming a man who no longer fears loss, because he understands that what's meant for him will never require chasing. And in that calm certainty, you find freedom. The kind of freedom that can't be taken away, no matter who leaves. Because in the end, the real power isn't in getting her back. The real power is in never needing her back at all.